Behind every legend lies a reason. This is Myth and Motive.
The photograph is a lie. My mother didn't just hide it. She kept it in a lead-lined box, buried beneath the floorboards of her closet. The night she finally showed it to me, the air in the room grew thick and metallic, like the smell before a lightning strike. A low, electrical hum filled the silence, and the hairs on my arms stood on end. She whispered that the people in the photo, they weren't my family. They were the ones who took me. And for 28 years, that photograph has been a beacon, a silent signal pulsing from its hiding place, calling them back. And at my grandmother's funeral, I finally understood why. My gaze drifted across the crowded parlor, past my weeping mother. Then I locked eyes with the man who stole me. He was holding a casserole dish. He was smiling. And he was my favorite cousin. The backstory begins in a sun-drenched backyard, all warmth and innocence. The air smelled of cut grass and childhood, every moment preserved in golden light. It was a perfect, fragile memory, the kind you cling to when everything else turns dark. The scene fractures into frantic cuts. A police station's fluorescent glare, my mother Lisa's trembling hands, a missing poster bearing that same Polaroid. My name is Beth Anderson. This is my mother, Lisa. And this was me. August 12, 1995. That Saturday afternoon in our quiet Ohio suburb seemed ordinary enough. My mom had taken me to the park. When my juice box slipped from my small hands, she turned for just a moment to retrieve it. The air suddenly carried the faint scent of ozone and damp earth as she straightened back up. Where I had been standing just seconds before, there was only empty space and a sudden, profound stillness. News headlines flashed across the screen. Quote, "Local girl, 4, abducted from Maple Grove Park. Police have no leads. Community vigil held." The official search lasted 6 weeks, but hope lingered far longer. My mother never stopped looking, her determination a quiet flame in the gathering dark. Yet the trail had gone cold, leaving behind only the scent of ozone and unanswered questions. Then, 8 months later, the impossible happened. I was discovered, stumbling and vacant, in a Kentucky parking lot 2 states away. My body bore only a handful of shallow scratches. Alive. Home. It was a miracle. A closed chapter. Present day. Beth, now 32, drives through a tunnel of autumn trees. The scent of damp earth and decaying leaves seeps through the car vents. A faint, rhythmic scratching, like branches on glass, accompanies the hum of the engine. The story I was told as a child was straightforward. A stranger took me, got frightened, and released me. We never discussed it afterward. We referred to that time only as the lost months, a shadowy, indistinct gap. It remains a dark blur in my mind, a void I can't penetrate. Life moved forward. I became a teacher. My mother grew fiercely protective, her strength now shadowed by a quiet haunting. Then, last week, my grandmother passed. The news arrived not with a phone call, but with the scent of old roses and damp earth. The air in our home grew dense and cold, as if mourning had a physical weight. That's when the whispers started. Not from the halls, but from the walls themselves. In her old Texas farmhouse, surrounded by family and the scent of funeral potatoes, the story I'd built my life on fractured completely. The air grew thick with the metallic tang of grief and the cloying sweetness of casserole dishes. Hushed conversations became a low, anxious hum that seemed to vibrate through the floorboards. Then, beneath the murmur, I heard it. A faint, wet scratching from somewhere deep within the walls. The house was thick with the scent of lilies and grief, a place of ghosts and casseroles. Beth embraced her mother, Lisa, whose eyes were raw and swollen from weeping. Across the shadowed room, her cousin Mark shared a low, private chuckle with an uncle. And there was Mark, Mom's nephew, a presence that felt separate from the morning air. My cousin, 10 years my senior, was the cool cousin of my childhood. He was my secret ally, the one who slipped me contraband sweets and shielded me from the stricter eyes of our aunts. Though he lived out of state, his presence was a constant for every milestone. He was always there for the big things, until he wasn't. He'd flown in for my graduation, sent flowers when I got engaged. Now, in my grandmother's hushed room, I sifted through memories. The air was thick with the scent of aged paper and forgotten perfume. Then, my fingers brushed against a single, cold Polaroid. As I searched for photos for the memorial slideshow, my fingers brushed against something unexpected in a poetry book. I turned the photo over, and in the dim light, I could just make out faded ink on the back. The inscription read, L&B, the 12th of August, 95. Perfect day. A faint, sweet scent of decay rose from the paper, and the air in the room suddenly felt thick and still. That Polaroid, taken the day I disappeared. My mother's handwriting on the back. A cold dread settled in my bones. The paper felt brittle and cold against my fingertips. A faint scent of old ink and dust hung in the air. My breath hitched. The room's temperature seemed to drop several degrees in an instant. In that silent moment, the weight of the past pressed down, heavy and inescapable. Why was it here, hidden in the dusty silence of Grandma's house, and not among Mom's cherished memories. The question was a cold weight in my hand as I carried the photograph downstairs. The scent of old coffee and damp wood filled the quiet kitchen where I found Lisa. My voice was barely a whisper as I extended the photo. Look what I found in Grandma's room. The air grew heavy as Lisa froze, the color draining from her face like a fading photograph. She didn't reach for it, her hands remaining at her sides as if weighted down by an invisible force. "Put that away," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the faint scent of ozone that had begun to permeate the room. Beth's eyes widened, her own breath hitching as she asked, "Why is it here? I've never even seen this picture." Lisa's voice dropped to a tight, urgent whisper. "Put it away. Not here. Not now." Mark entered the kitchen with a breezy step, his smile failing to touch his cold, distant eyes. Mark sensed the electric tension in the room. He offered help, but his aunt's reaction was chilling. For a fleeting moment, her composure shattered completely. The air grew thick with the metallic scent of fear. Her expression vanished in an instant, replaced by a tense, artificial smile. "We're fine, Mark. Thank you," Lisa said, her voice thin and strained. But it was that initial, fleeting look that told the true story. In that split second, my mother wasn't looking at her nephew. She was looking at a threat. My thoughts began to spiral. Mark had just turned 16 that summer. Old enough to drive, old enough to scheme. The air in the car grew thick, carrying the faint metallic scent of rain on hot asphalt. I could hear the soft, rhythmic tapping of his fingers on the steering wheel. A nervous, deliberate beat. Every possibility, every terrible outcome began to crystallize in the damp silence between us. He lived with his father about an hour from us back then. He visited just the week before everything happened. The memory carries the scent of damp earth and ozone. That visit now feels like a sticky, final prelude. Scanning the reunion, every interaction with Mark now felt painful. His casual ruffle of a child's hair carried a predatory weight. The way he stood too close to Mom wasn't protective. It was invasive. A sickly sweet scent of rot seemed to cling to his every move. He watched Beth from across the room, his smile frozen, dissecting. Then, buried fragments surfaced. The chemical sting of gasoline mixed with cheap pine air freshener. The tinny jangle of a specific rock song crackled from a car radio. And a nickname, Bumblebee, spoken by a voice that shouldn't remember. But then I remembered it. A voice in the impenetrable dark, singing that same haunting melody, calling me Bumblebee. A voice that felt unsettlingly familiar. The voice of a teenage boy. In that moment, the past and the present collapsed into a single, terrifying moment. The house grew still, the last of the guests gone, leaving only family in the suffocating quiet. Beth cornered Lisa on the dark back porch, the night air thick with the smell of damp earth and distant rain. It was Mark, wasn't it? Beth's voice was a low, sharp thing in the dark. Lisa stared into the void, a profound weariness settling in her bones. "You don't know what you're saying." "The photo, the way you looked at me," Beth pressed, the words sticking in her throat. "Mom, I'm starting to remember." A rusted car sits abandoned, its radio crackling with the faint strain of an old song called Bumblebee. Lisa's voice breaks, a raw whisper that hangs in the damp air. "Who called me Bumblebee?" The memory hits her like a physical blow. Her composure shatters, and silent tears carve paths down her pale face. Her next words are a confession, exhaled into the stillness, barely audible over the rain. He was just a messed up kid. His parents, divorce shattered him, leaving a hollow rage in his throat. To the police, he was the star witness, pointing to a man in a blue jacket. That testimony became my only comfort, a fragile truth I clung to. Then, on the porch, her confession began, each word collapsing the world I knew. Grandma discovered the truth. She tracked Mark to that decaying motel herself. The air in the hallway tasted of mildew and stale cigarettes. She never called the authorities. She personally drove me to her home, the scent of damp earth and ozone clinging to her car. Once inside, she laid out her terms with unnerving calm. Her voice was a low whisper, barely audible over the heavy silence. "Her grandson," she said, the words sticky with implication. Her son's boy. She couldn't dismantle two households. If he sought help, if he remained distant, if he never, ever uttered a word we could feign never occurred, "We can have you return." It was the sole path to ensure your safety, to halt the horror. Beth's voice emerged, thin and brittle, carrying the metallic scent of fear. "Safe?" she whispered, the word hanging in the damp, oppressive air. "He's been in my life. You let him embrace me. You made me trust him." Lisa's voice dropped to a chilling whisper, heavy with a lifetime of rock and iron. "I watched him every second. For 28 years, Beth, I have lived in a cage of my own making, smiling at him, pretending, all to keep a promise to my mother that turned my world to dust, to keep him from snapping. Don't you think that has been my life sentence?" A metallic scent, like old pennies, suddenly tainted the air. The soft click of the porch door latch broke the quiet. Mark stood framed in the doorway, a stark silhouette. He had heard every word. The pleasant facade had vanished completely. His face was now unnervingly calm and empty. A faint, metallic scent of iron hung in the damp air as he spoke. His voice was a flat monotone, devoid of any warmth it once held. "She kept her promise, Aunt Lisa," he said. I kept mine. I got the help. I'm a different person. Beth's voice shook with a fury that seemed to thicken the very air around them. You stole me. You stole my mother's life. Mark looked at her, his head tilting slightly. I was a child who wanted a sister. I just didn't want to give you back. His final words were a whisper that carried the weight of a lifetime. I never meant to hurt you, Bumblebee. Beth sat motionless in her car, the engine long since silenced, as her gaze remained fixed on the two photographs resting on the passenger seat. A Polaroid, its edges worn, lay beside a recent family reunion photo where Mark stood smiling in the back row. The air inside the car grew thick and stale, carrying the faint, metallic scent of old coins from the heating vents. And that was the most terrifying part of it all. The police were never called. What was there to charge? A traumatized teenager from 30 years ago? My mother's choice was a prison, but she believed it was the only wall that kept the monster out. The air grew heavy with the scent of damp earth and old rock, as if the house itself held its breath. So here is my truth. My kidnapper wasn't a stranger in a van. He was the cousin who gave me away at my wedding. His punishment was a secret, buried deep where no light could reach. My mother's punishment was knowing a slow, corrosive truth that ate at her in the suffocating quiet. Beth lifted her gaze from the photographs, locking eyes with us through the lens. A terrible, quiet understanding settled in her expression. My punishment is the memory of his voice singing me to sleep in that dark room. It's looking at every family photo and wondering who else knew. Every celebration, every family embrace was tainted by a hidden betrayal. The true monster wasn't some shadow in the dark. He sat across from me, passing the potatoes. The most terrifying question doesn't ask who stole me away. It asks something far worse. The final image is Mark's smiling face in that reunion photo, frozen in a moment of normalcy that now feels like a cruel joke. How many other families are living this same nightmare, their happy memories hiding the same terrible truth? A single, jangly guitar chord hangs in the air, a ghost of the 90s rock song that played during that reunion. Then silence, thick and heavy, swallowing everything until only that question remains.
If the legend hooked you, subscribe and open the next case.